Neville Goddard, Your Faith is Your Fortune, chapter 25, I rolled right into from chapter 24, Clairvoyance. I rolled right into it. Chapter 25 was 23rd Psalm, so that is in the previous video. This will be chapter 26, Gethsemane. Then cometh Jesus with them unto a place called Gethsemane, and saith unto the disciples, Sit ye here while I go and pray yonder. Matthew 26:36. It's getting good. A most wonderful mystical romance is told in the story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. But man has failed to see the light of its symbology and has mistakenly interpreted this mystical union as an agonizing experience in which Jesus pleaded in vain with his Father to change his destiny. Gethsemane is to the mystic the garden of creation, the place in consciousness where man goes to realize his defined objectives. Gethsemane is a compound word meaning to press out an oily substance. Geth, to press out, and shemen, an oily substance. The story of Gethsemane reveals to the mystic in dramatic symbology the act of creation. Just as man contains within himself an oily substance which, in the act of creation, is pressed out into a likeness of himself, so he has within himself a divine principle, his consciousness, which conditions itself as a state of consciousness and without assistance presses out or objectifies itself. A garden is a cultivated piece of ground, a specially prepared field, where seeds of the gardener's own choice are planted and cultivated. Gethsemane is such a garden, the place in consciousness, where the mystic goes with his properly defined objectives. The garden is entered when man takes his attention from the world around about him and places it on his objectives. Remember, we're doing that anytime we go in and shut the door. And we go in here, I am all that is God, our self-conception. Anytime we go here in our I am, this is what he's referring to right here. And remembering, there's your objective. Your objective is to objectify your desire here, and you're in this self-concept, and you want to objectify this self-concept. You're putting together mother and father, and you're breathing life into the son of that creation. Almost got to sneeze. Man's clarified desires are seeds containing the power and plans of self-expression. And like the seeds within man, these too are buried within an oily substance, a joyful, thankful attitude of mind. As man contemplates being and possessing that which he desires to be and possess, he has begun the process of pressing out, or the spiritual act of creation. Anytime you have a desire, and you know where the desire comes from. It comes from I am. It comes from God. It comes from all that is. The desire is filled within you. Anytime you have that desire and you impress upon your consciousness the desire to express that desire, that's from within. As man contemplates being and possessing that which he desires to be and possess, he has begun the process of pressing out, or the spiritual act of creation, which is what we've been talking about. These seeds are pressed out and planted when man loses himself in a wild, mad state of joy, consciously feeling and claiming himself to be that which he formerly desired to be. Desires expressed or pressed out result in the passing of that particular desire. Man cannot possess a thing and still desire to possess it at one and the same time. Once the desire is fulfilled by the objectification, the son, then the desire can't exist anymore. The desire is fulfilled. It's fulfilled by the expression of that, of itself. So, as one consciously appropriates the feeling of being the thing desired, this desire to be the thing passes. dash, it's realized, is realized, excuse me. So as one consciously appropriates the feeling of being the thing desired, this desire to be the thing passes, is realized. The receptive attitude of mind, feeling and receiving the impression of being the thing desired, is the fertile ground or womb which receives the seed, defined objective. The fertile ground or womb is when the mother and the father. Within you, within your consciousness. The receptive attitude of mind, feeling and receiving the impression of being the thing desired is the fertile ground right here, or the womb which receives the seed, which the seed is the defined objective. This is another way at the same thing. The seed which is pressed out of a man grows into the likeness of the man from whom it was pressed. Likewise, the mystical seed, your conscious claim that you are that which you heretofore desired to be, will grow into the likeness of you from whom and into whom it is pressed. Yes, Gethsemane is the cultivated garden of romance, where the disciplined man goes to press seeds of joy, defined desires in parentheses, out of himself into his receptive attitude of mind, there to care for and nurture them by consciously walking in the joy of being all that formerly he desired to be. Feel with the great gardener the secret thrill of knowing that things and qualities not now seen will be seen as soon as these conscious impressions grow and ripen to maturity. Anytime you're putting those impressions on your subconscious or your conscious self, they will be coming about. Feel with the great gardener, the secret thrill of knowing that things and qualities not now seen, which is why you're impressing your consciousness, will be seen as soon as these conscious impressions grow and ripen to maturity. Boom, there's the sun. There's the objectification of your subjective. Your consciousness is Lord and husband. Your consciousness is Lord and husband right here. The conscious state in which you dwell is the wife or beloved. That's right here, the husband and the wife. This state made visible is your son bearing witness of you. Boom, right here. This is the state made visible by this union. His father and mother for your visible world is made in the image and likeness of the state of consciousness in which you live. This state made visible is your son bearing witness to you. This state made visible is your son bearing witness of you, his father and mother. For your visible world is made in the image and likeness of the state of consciousness in which you live. Your world and the fullness thereof are nothing more or less than your defined consciousness objectified. Your world and the fullness thereof are nothing more or less than your defined consciousness objectified. Knowing this to be true, see to it that you choose well the mother of your children. That conscious state in which you live, your conception of yourself. Very interesting. The mother of your children. Whoa, is that conscious state in which you live, that conscious state in which you dwell is where you'll be making the impressions to be expressed. So no matter what this self-concept is, it is a womb from which your manifestations come. Choose well. Knowing this to be true, see to it that you choose well the mother of your children. Your children come from this mother. You're not going to be in this self-concept and go choose this mother, this mother, this mother. That's not the point of this. Choose well your mother is the idea that you're putting forth that you want to manifest. This self-concept has desires from I am that provide solutions to the problems or limitations that are within this self-concept. Choose well the mother means choose well the idea. You're putting together an idea of that which you desire to bring forth. Choose well the mother. The mother is your idea, where your idea is going to become the fruit. That conscious state in which you live, your conception of yourself. Choose well the mother of your children. That conscious state in which you live, your conception of yourself. The wise man chooses his wife with great discretion. He realizes that his children must inherit the qualities of their parents, and so he devotes much time and care to the selection of their mother. The mystic knows that the conscious state in which he lives is the choice that he has made of a wife, the mother of his children. That this state must in time embody itself within his world. So he is ever select in his choice and always claims himself to be his highest ideal. He consciously defines himself as that which he desires to be. When man realizes that the conscious state in which he lives is the choice that he has made of a mate, he will be more careful of his moods and feelings. He will not permit himself to react to suggestions of fear, lack, or any undesirable impression. This self-concept you're dwelling in has its bed of creation. And you've made your bed here. You're trying to choose your way to a different manifestation or a different objectified reality. It's to be discerning in your choices here. Again, back to the robber who has the only desire to go rob a bank or steal, is doing so from his bed of creation. And the desires that pour forth into that realm of his self-concept are the ones that are befitting of that self-concept. So he maybe hasn't discerned if he's in the throes of robbing or taking from another that which is not his, stealing. He hasn't discerned yet that he needs to be careful with the mother, the choice of a mother. The choice of a mother seems to be the only one he can make, but he hasn't discerned yet that these desires fit this self-concept. The lesson and the learning is embedded in the experience. The robber, the thief, the beggar man, the rich man, the poor man all have the same consciousness, the same backbone, the same I am, the same God. We're all tied into the same source. So at some point, let's say this robber in our example chooses to go into the I am, to be still and know that I am God, to close off the senses. This is the simplest and fastest way for any self-concept. Any person can get direct access immediately. Any person at any moment can have direct access. Just because the limitations exist in this example of the criminal mind or the person who's single that wants to be married, it doesn't matter. The limitations exist there, but any concept of any self still has direct access to the I am. Always available. Always can be made different choices to the wife of your creation. Always can be made. Repeating that sentence. When man realizes that the conscious state in which he lives is the choice that he has made of a mate, he will be more careful of his moods and feelings. He will not permit himself to react to suggestions of fear, lack, or any undesirable impression. After he's done some I am, let's say, such suggestions of lack could never pass the watch of the disciplined mind of the mystic, for he knows that every conscious claim must in time be expressed as a condition of his world, of his environment. Oh boy, when you become aware of this, you know, way back to the first or second chapter, the words that go from your mouth, they prosper and become the thing. And it's to be watchful of what you send out. And to the mystic, he is very careful of what he thinks of anybody. If someone around you is saying something negative of someone else, and you're to either withdraw from that conversation or build up that conversation or take joy in laughing with the conversation, you can make a simple choice. This isn't the end of the world here, but it's being aware of where you are if you make the joke. If you do take part in criticizing another person, then you know where you put yourself. You know from which kind of fruit you're creating. You know of which kind of fruit you're creating from this practice or this example. It's going to come back. Such suggestions of lack could never pass the watch of the disciplined mind of the mystic, for he knows that every conscious claim must in time be expressed as a condition of his world, of his environment. So he remains faithful to his beloved, his defined objective, by defining and claiming and feeling himself to be that which he desires to express. Let a man ask himself if his defined objective would be a thing of joy and beauty if it were realized. Let a man ask himself if his defined objective would be a thing of joy and beauty if it were realized. If his answer is in the affirmative, then he may know that his choice of a bride is a princess of Israel, a daughter of Judah. For every defined objective which expresses joy when realized is a daughter of Judah, the King of praise. Oh man, that's the ultimate question. Let a man ask himself if his defined objective would be a thing of joy and beauty if it were realized. If it were realized, if the thing were realized, would it be a thing of beauty? The answer here is you're single and you want to be married, you want to be in love. The answer is yes, for sure, absolutely. Over here, let's say the criminal minded self-concept person doesn't have an answer to that question. And actually, the answer is in the negative, not the affirmative. Because the answer is going to only lead to a very limited source of funds. If the person here robs the bank and gets so much money, it's not going to satisfy the entire life of this person. It never does. It's never enough for this type of activity. It's never going to be enough. Let a man ask himself if his defined objective would be a thing of joy and beauty if it were realized. If his answer is in the affirmative, then he may know that his choice of a bride is a princess of Israel, a daughter of Judah. For every defined objective which expresses joy when realized is a daughter of Judah, the King of praise. Boy, oh boy, how very poetic. Jesus took with him into his hour of prayer his disciples, or disciplined attributes of mind, and commanded them to watch while he prayed, so that no thought or belief that would deny the realization of his desire might enter his consciousness. Very, very powerful sentence. Let's repeat it. Wow. Jesus took with him into his hour of prayer his disciples. Those are the disciplines of his mind, or disciplined attributes of mind, and commanded them to watch while he prayed. So he prayed with the disciples helping steer him in and through the prayer, so that no thought or belief that would deny the realization of his desire might enter his consciousness. You say a prayer, and that prayer has you happily married. You're here, you're not married, you want to be married, you're single. Let's use the S. And over here, you're married and you're happily in love, okay? Just for fun. And here, you don't have that. This is a minus symbol on the heart. You're single and you don't have love and you're not in love. And over here, you're married and you're in love. This example with his desires clearly, when you go into your prayer with your disciples, your disciplined attributes of mind, and command them to watch while you pray, while you're here impressing your consciousness that you are married, I am that I am happily in love and married. I have a mate that fits me perfectly. While you're here impressing this consciousness of this self-concept, you must watch what you are putting in your mind. Those 12 attributes of mind that we went over are very important. They're your gatekeepers of your attitude, of your practice, of your mental thoughts, of whether or not you're listening. Simon, Peter, the rock, not listening, being firm. Every one of the disciples are your friend at this point. Jesus commanded them to watch while he prayed, so that no thought or belief would deny the realization of his desire, your desire. Follow the example of Jesus, who with his desires clearly defined, follow the example of Jesus with his desires clearly defined, entered the Garden of Gethsemane, which is the state of joy, accompanied by his disciples, his disciplined mind, to lose himself in a wild joy of realization. That is great. The fixing of his attention on his objective was his command to his disciplined mind to watch and remain faithful to that fixation. Watch and remain faithful to that fixation. I am in love and married. That impression is happening here, but remain faithful. Keep the course. Stay the course. The fixing of his attention on his objective was his command to his disciplined mind to watch and remain faithful to that fixation. All of the words his are capitalized. Contemplating the joy that would be his on realizing his desire, he began the spiritual act of generation, the act of pressing out the mystical seed, his defined desire. In this fixation, he remained, claiming and feeling himself to be that which he, before he entered Gethsemane, desired to be, until his whole being, which is his consciousness, was bathed in an oily sweat, which is joy, resembling blood, which is life. In short, until his whole consciousness was permeated with the living, sustained joy of being his defined objective. Now I'll repeat the sentence without the parentheses. In this fixation, he remained, claimed, in this fixation, he remained claiming and feeling himself to be that which he desired to be until his whole being was bathed in an oily sweat resembling blood. In short, until his whole consciousness was permeated with this living, sustained joy of being his desired objective. That is feeling it real. Neville talked about when he was wanting to catch the boat from, I believe it was Barbados back to the States. And there was a typical situation where he didn't get the tickets beforehand while he was in New York. He made it to Barbados. And then when he was there, his brother was like, hey, why didn't you arrange passage back to New York when you were there? That's the city of all commerce. What's wrong with you? And Neville wasn't bothered. Simon Peter wasn't bothered by what his brother said. That night he went into his feeling it real, his state of prayer, which is what was just described right there. And he saw himself at the top. He saw himself walking on the gangplank. And back then they had probably tender boats that took you out to the boat. He said the harbor wasn't so deep. So I believe in some situation he described, he had to walk on this walk gangplank up, and he would imagine going to the top, and then his mind would drift as he was falling asleep, and then he would catch himself. He'd go back to the bottom, and he'd walk up to the top. He'd feel the rail with his hand, and he had this whole practice. He would just repeat it while he was falling asleep. And in the state of doing this, he didn't have his daughter in his arms, I believe, and I could be paraphrasing here, of course, I am, but I think in the situation when it unfolded very soon after, within days, I think, he was on this boat, boarding it. There was a super lucky coincidence that he got a ticket, and while he was going through the act of getting on the boat, the exact unfoldment of what his visual feeling state, it actually unfolded with his brother holding his daughter while they got on the boat, I believe, or carried the daughter up the plank, because the way Neville visualized it while falling asleep was that he was touching the rail. It's a little loosely paraphrased there by me, but it is exactly what you're doing as you fall asleep. You're imagining it in action. You're in the player. You're seeing your arms. You're not seeing yourself from out here. So when Neville was walking up this gangplank type of thing, this walk bridge, he was seeing his arm touching the rail, walking up to the ship. And that's what gave him the passage and gave him the ticket, was that visualization as he was falling asleep. As this fixation is accomplished, so that the mystic knows by his feeling of joy that he has passed from his former conscious state into his present consciousness, the Passover or crucifixion is attained. This crucifixion or fixation of the new conscious claim is followed by the Sabbath, a time of rest. Once he did the visualization or feeling it real, and he knew it was done. He knew it was done. There is always an interval of time between the impression and its expression, between the conscious claim and its embodiment. This interval is called the Sabbath, the period of rest or non-effort, in parentheses, the day of entombment. To walk unmoved in the consciousness of being or possessing a certain state is to keep the Sabbath. The story of the crucifixion beautifully expresses this mystical stillness or rest. We are told that after Jesus cried out, "It is finished," he was placed in a tomb. There he remained for the entire Sabbath. When the new state of consciousness is appropriated to you, when the new state of consciousness is appropriated so you feel by this appropriation fixed and secure in the knowledge that it is finished, then you too will cry out, "It is finished," and will enter the tomb or Sabbath, an interval of time in which you will walk unmoved by the conviction that your new consciousness must be resurrected, made visible in parentheses. Back to the pizza. It is so simple of an example, I know, but when you make that call and you order that pizza and you tell them you're paying cash, you place the order and you don't even think about it again until that doorbell is rung and you're answering and there's the pizza. You never doubted it for a second. When you hung up the phone when you first called, you entered the Sabbath. It was done. It is finished. This is exactly an example of everything you can create in your life. You can do the same thing with a car, a house, a mate, a relationship. Every single thing you can do this for. You go into the Sabbath after you realize it's done. Easter, the day of resurrection, falls on the first Sunday after the full moon in Aries. The mystical reason for this is simple. It's going to get good. I better get some water. A defined area will not precipitate itself in the form of rain until this area reaches the point of saturation. Just so the state in which you dwell will not express itself until the whole is permeated with the consciousness that is so. It is finished. Your defined objective is the imaginary state, just as the equator is the imaginary line across which the sun must pass to mark the beginning of spring. This state, like the moon, has no light for life of itself, but will reflect the light of consciousness, or sun, S-U-N. I am the light of the world. I am the resurrection and the life. As Easter is determined by the full moon in Aries, so too is the resurrection of your conscious claim determined by the full consciousness of your claim, by actually living as this new conception. This new conception. Most men fail to resurrect their objectives because they fail to remain faithful to their newly defined state until this fullness is attained. If man would bear in mind the fact that there can be no Easter or day of resurrection until after the full moon, he would realize that the state into which he has consciously passed will be expressed or resurrected only after he has remained within the state of being his defined objective, until his whole self thrills with the feeling of actually being his conscious claim and consciously living in this state of being it, and only in this way will man ever resurrect or realize his desire. Big time knock on the board for that one. Oh my goodness. The thrill, until the whole self thrills. When you imagine, I can't say enough about the pizza. When you're hungry and you imagine the pizza, you thrill with what you want to put on top of it. It's exciting. It is very, very exciting. You're like, yes, let's do that. Let's call. Everybody agrees. You're like, yes, that moment, whether you realize it or not, is where the thrill became an exalted thrill. Because on your way to get the phone and to make the phone call, you're now entering the Sabbath already. The thrill was in the decision to say yes to that. The Sabbath isn't when you made the Sabbath before the call. Because when you made the decision, you actually entered the Sabbath. The thrill was upon you when you decided, yes, that's a great idea. This is the same with any idea. And it should be that playful like a kid to make it so. Children do this all day long, every day. Just watch them. Just watch them. They do this all the time. Are we going to eat this? Are we going to eat that? And I use food as an example because it does have an impact to us. So immediate. It's so quick. It's so satisfying. And all these principles can be weaved in and out of your experience with food. And food is an easy example to test. What an amazing chapter. I mean, there's a lot in here. And you can see a pattern, of course. Neville is using a lot of other different ways to go to say the same message. And it is very, very good because before I got into Neville, I wasn't so attracted to understanding these principles through Scripture, nor what I ever would have because I studied the Seth material for so many decades, and that was very non-scriptural. But again, like I said before in a previous video, the bodies of work are very similar. This one just has the scriptural breakdown, which I really do appreciate. And then you have the as an example, the Seth material was non-scriptural because Jane Roberts, her attitude. But besides that, the whole idea here is that there's great information in all of this book and any of Neville's works. Back to the opening quote. Then cometh Jesus with them unto a place called Gethsemane, and saith unto his disciples, Sit ye here while I go and pray yonder. Matthew 26:36. That one quote is what we just broke down. Let me know what you dug out of there, if anything moved you. I got a lot out of here. That was amazing. And I would have to say that opening quote, it was the biggest one because he ordered his disciplined mind. He entered the Garden of Gethsemane, accompanied by his disciples, to lose himself in a wild joy of realization. There it is. All right. Well, like I said, this was chapter 25. The last one we put 2 and 1. This was 25. Excuse me, this was 26. Gethsemane, 26. We have one more chapter after this. We're wrapping up the book. We'll see you in the next video.